While most of my friends' families revolved around their parents, in our house, my grandmother was the one who really called the shots. And honestly, she had every right to. She'd built our family's exclusive tableware store from nothing, turning it into a thriving business that made her quite wealthy. "Your grandmother has always had an eye for beautiful things," my father would say whenever customers praised our store's collection. He and my mother ran the day-to-day operations now, but everyone knew who the real owner was. My grandmother had only stepped back to enjoy her retirement, not to give up control. My younger brother Tommy was being groomed as the heir apparent from the moment he could walk. "He needs to learn everything about the business," my mother would say, while practically ignoring my existence. It didn't seem to matter that I was getting straight A's, while Tommy could barely be bothered to crack open a book. "Who needs to be smart to run a store?" Tommy would say, sprawled on the couch playing video games instead of doing his homework. "I just need to know how to count money." Our parents would laugh at these comments like they were adorable, while I sat at the dining table working on my advanced math problems. But I had my secret weapon, Grandma. Every weekend, I'd go to her house, and we'd play what she called business games. She taught me everything about running a successful store, from inventory management to customer service, from profit margins to negotiating with suppliers. "Now, Rachel," she'd say, setting up our pretend store on her living room table, "if a customer wants to buy this crystal wine set for $500, but our cost was $200, what's our profit margin?" Her eyes would twinkle as I quickly calculated the numbers. "That's a 60% margin, Grandma," I'd answer excitedly. "But we should consider our overhead costs too, right?" She'd beam at me, pulling another gift from her seemingly endless supply. "That's my girl. You understand business better than most adults I know." These sessions with Grandma weren't just fun, they sparked something in me. While my parents were busy preparing Tommy to inherit the store, I was making my own plans. I decided I would go to college and study business properly. When I turned 14, my life changed dramatically. I still remember that evening as if it was yesterday. My parents called me into the living room after dinner, and my father's stern face told me this wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. "Rachel," he said, looking at me with cold eyes, "your mother and I have been talking. It's time for you to stop being lazy and help out with the family business. Starting tomorrow, you'll work at the store after school." The next day, I started my new job at our family store. Every day after school, while my brother Tommy went home to play video games and mess around, I was mopping floors, dusting shelves, arranging expensive china, and doing whatever else needed to be done. I worked hard, determined to prove myself. Sometimes I'd stay late into the evening, making sure every crystal glass sparkled and every display was perfect. After 3 months of working alongside the adult employees, I started noticing something that bothered me more and more. Every Friday, all the employees would receive their paychecks. They'd discuss weekend plans and what they were going to do with their earnings. Meanwhile, I worked just as hard, sometimes harder, but received nothing. One evening, when the store was empty except for my parents counting the day's earnings at the register, I gathered my courage and approached them. "Mom, Dad," I started nervously, "I've been thinking. I'm doing the same work as the other employees, actually, I'm doing multiple jobs. Shouldn't I be getting paid too?" The look they exchanged made my blood run cold. My father's face hardened, and my mother's lips pressed into a thin line. "Paid?" my father scoffed. "Do you have any idea how much we spend on you? Food, clothes, that roof over your head, you think all that's free?" "But that's different," I argued. "Parents are supposed to." "Don't you dare tell us what parents are supposed to do," my mother snapped. "Consider your work here as payment for everything we provide for you." Many children would be grateful for such an arrangement. I felt tears welling up in my eyes, but fought to hold them back. That's when my mother stepped closer, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper that I'll never forget. "And let me make something very clear," she hissed. "Don't even think about running to your grandmother with this. This is our business to run as we see fit. If I find out you've complained to her, you'll regret it. Understood?" For 2 long years, I worked without pay, watching other employees receive their weekly paychecks while I got nothing but tired feet and calloused hands. But as my 16th birthday approached, I made a decision that would change everything. The day after my birthday, I walked into my parents' office with my head held high. "I quit," I announced firmly. My father's head snapped up from his paperwork. "What did you just say?" "I'm not working here anymore," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I need my own money, and since you won't pay me, I found a job at the Coffee Corner Cafe. They're hiring part-time after school." My parents exchanged alarmed looks. My mother recovered first, her eyes narrowing calculatingly. "Fine," she said slowly, "but on one condition: you tell your grandmother you're still working here. She doesn't need to know about this arrangement." As I walked out of that office, I felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. For the first time since I turned 14, I was taking control of my own life, and it felt amazing. My first day at Coffee Corner marked the beginning of my new life. The manager, Sarah, was nothing like my parents. She was kind, patient, and actually appreciated hard work. Every Friday, I'd get my paycheck, and that feeling was indescribable. For the first time in my life, I had money that was truly mine. I loved everything about my new job: the smell of fresh coffee, the regular customers who learned my name, and especially my coworkers who treated me like an equal, not a servant. The best part? I could finally buy things for myself without having to beg my parents. My first paycheck went toward a new phone, nothing fancy, but it was mine. The second one bought me some new clothes. But what I enjoyed most was being able to buy small gifts for Grandma. One week, it would be her favorite chocolates, another week, a beautiful scarf I spotted at the mall. "Oh, sweetheart, you shouldn't spend your store wages on me," she'd say, her eyes twinkling as she admired whatever small present I'd brought. Those moments were the hardest, lying to Grandma about still working at the store. She'd ask how things were going there, and I'd make up stories about rearranging displays or helping customers. "You have such a good eye for presentation," she'd beam proudly. "Just like I did at your age." The guilt would eat at me, but I kept reminding myself that this lie was protecting my newfound freedom. As senior year progressed, my grades stayed perfect. My teachers started talking about top universities: Harvard, Yale, Stanford. "With your academic record, Rachel, you could go anywhere," my guidance counselor said during one of our meetings. But I knew better. My parents wouldn't spend a dime on my education, they'd made that clear enough over the years. And while Grandma would probably help if I asked, I couldn't bring myself to do it. After years of being dependent on family, I wanted to stand on my own feet. So I focused my research on local options, and discovered that our city college had an excellent business program. Better yet, they offered full scholarships to top students. I spent weeks perfecting my application, and when the acceptance letter came with the scholarship offer, I felt like I'd won the lottery. The morning before graduation, Grandma visited me with a special gift, a stunning new laptop. "For my future businesswoman," she'd said with a warm smile, hugging me tight. "I know you'll do great things with it." That evening at the graduation dinner, with just my parents and brother present, I decided it was time to share my news. "I've enrolled in City College's business program," I announced, trying to keep my voice casual. "Full scholarship." The silence following my announcement was broken by my father's calculating smile. "Well, that's certainly convenient," he said, exchanging a look with my mother. "At least we won't have to worry about tuition." "Yes, you've solved that problem quite nicely," my mother added, wiping her mouth with a napkin. "Which brings us to our next point. Now that you're an adult and finished with high school, we need to discuss your living arrangements." "What do you mean?" I asked, fork frozen halfway to my mouth. "Rent," my father said flatly. "Starting today, you'll need to pay rent to continue living here." I laughed, thinking it was some kind of bizarre joke. But their faces remained serious, and my laughter died in my throat. "You can't be serious," I said, looking between them. "I'm your daughter." "You're an adult now," my mother countered. We're no longer legally obligated to support you. This house belongs to us, and if you want to continue living here, you'll need to pay your fair share." My mind was spinning. "What about Tommy?" I asked, glancing at my brother who was unusually quiet. "Will he have to pay rent when he turns 18 too?" The way my parents avoided my eyes told me everything I needed to know. Of course Tommy wouldn't have to pay rent. Perfect, precious Tommy would never be treated this way. "That's different," my father muttered, not even bothering to explain how. "This is insane," I said, pushing back from the table. "I'm your child. I have a right to live in my own home." "This isn't your home," my mother snapped, her mask of civility finally cracking. "This is our house, and if you won't pay rent, you need to leave. Tonight." "Tonight?" I echoed in disbelief. "You're throwing me out on graduation night?" "You have an hour to pack your things," my father said, returning to his dinner as if he hadn't just dropped a bomb on my life. I ran upstairs in a daze, tears blurring my vision as I threw clothes and necessities into my bags. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely zip them closed. College wouldn't start for months. What was I supposed to do until then? My first thought was Grandma. She would help me, I knew she would. But when I called her number, it went straight to voicemail. Then I remembered she'd left for her annual trip to Hawaii just yesterday. She'd be gone for at least 3 weeks. I couldn't ruin her vacation with this drama. She deserved to enjoy her time off without having to deal with my parents' cruelty. Wiping my tears, I scrolled through my phone contacts until I found Jenny's number. We'd been friends since middle school, and her family had always been kind to me. 20 minutes later, I was loading my bags into Jenny's car, leaving behind the only home I'd ever known. As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of my parents watching from the window, their faces expressionless. In that moment, I finally accepted what I'd always known deep down: they had never really loved me at all. Life fell into a new routine during those 3 weeks at Jenny's house. Wake up on her fold-out couch before dawn, quietly get ready so I wouldn't disturb her family, work my shifts at the cafe, save every penny I could. Sarah, my manager, was a godsend during this time. She understood my situation and increased my hours without me even having to ask. Working helped keep my mind off things. I threw myself into every task, whether it was crafting perfect lattes or scrubbing down the equipment at closing time. "You're going to work yourself into the ground," Jenny would say when I'd come home exhausted after another double shift. But what else could I do? I needed to save as much as possible before college started, and staying busy meant less time to think about my parents' betrayal. I avoided them completely during this time. They never called or texted, and I was fine with that. What could they possibly say to justify throwing their daughter out on graduation night? Tommy sent me one message asking where I was, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. When Grandma finally returned from Hawaii after those long 3 weeks, I felt a surge of hope so strong it almost made me dizzy. I'd waited patiently, forcing myself not to contact her during her vacation. She deserved to enjoy her time away without getting dragged into family drama. But now, finally, I could tell her everything. With trembling fingers, I typed out a message: "Grandma, I need to talk to you about something important. Can we meet?" Her response came faster than I expected, but instead of her usual warm reply with a time and place, it was just a link. My heart started pounding as I clicked it, opening my mother's social media page. What I saw made my blood run cold. "My heart is breaking as I write this," my mother's post began, the words dripping with false sincerity. "Our beloved daughter Rachel has run away from home. But what makes this situation even more painful is discovering that before she left, she stole a significant amount of money from our family store's register. We tried to give her everything, to show her nothing but love, and this is how she repays us. We never thought our own child could do something like this." I stared at the screen in horror as I scrolled through the comments section, watching my reputation being shredded to pieces by people who'd known me my entire life. Aunts, uncles, family friends, all expressing their shock and disappointment in me. "I can't believe Rachel would do this. She always seemed like such a good girl. After everything you've done for her. This generation has no respect. You should report this to the police. Theft is theft, even if it's family. My mother's response to the police suggestions made me feel physically sick. No, we can't do that to our daughter. Despite everything, we love her too much. We just pray she'll come to her senses and return what she's stolen. Our hearts are broken, but we still have hope she'll make this right. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. The sheer audacity, the calculated cruelty of their lies, it was beyond anything I'd imagined them capable of. They'd thrown me out of my home, and now they were trying to destroy my reputation too. I drove straight to Grandma's house, my heart pounding the entire way. When she opened the door, her face was unreadable, but she stepped aside to let me in. "I don't believe that post for a second," she said before I could speak. "Sit down and tell me what's really going on." The words poured out of me like a broken dam. "I haven't worked at the store for 2 years, Grandma. Not since I was 16. I've been working at Coffee Corner Cafe all this time." My voice cracked. "I'm so sorry I lied to you about it." "Go on," she said quietly, her face growing darker with each word. I told her everything, about working for free from age 14, about my parents refusing to pay me because I owed them for living expenses, about their threats to keep me quiet. When I got to the part about them throwing me out on graduation night, Grandma's hands clenched into fists. "Those lying thieves," she spat, jumping up from her chair. She strode to her office and returned with a stack of papers. "Look at these payroll statements. According to these, you've been receiving a salary at the store from age 14 until now. They've been paying you on paper this whole time, even after you quit. Where do you think that money went?" My head spun as I looked at the numbers. Thousands of dollars, all in my name, all going into some account I'd never seen. Grandma was already on the phone. "James, I need you at the store immediately. Full audit. Every transaction, every account, every penny." She paused, listening. "And find out exactly how much money is missing from the register, the amount they're accusing Rachel of stealing." While Grandma made calls, I opened my laptop. My hands were shaking with anger as I began typing my response to Mom's post. "I've stayed quiet long enough. Here's the truth, I didn't steal anything, and I didn't run away. I was thrown out of my house on graduation night because I refused to pay rent to my own parents, something they've never asked of my brother. I haven't worked at the family store for 2 years, I've been working at Coffee Corner Cafe. My parents kicked me out with nowhere to go, and now they're trying to destroy my reputation to cover their tracks. Want proof? Ask Sarah Mitchell, the owner of Coffee Corner, where I've really been working these past 2 years. Ask about my schedule, my paychecks, my performance. Ask why my parents waited 3 weeks to mention this theft, coincidentally right when Grandma returned from vacation." I shared the post with my friends and coworkers. Within minutes, Sarah had responded. "I can confirm everything Rachel has said. She's been one of our most dedicated employees for the past 2 years, working after school and weekends. Her honesty and work ethic are beyond reproach. I trust her with my business, my customers, and my reputation. These accusations against her are completely false." Within hours of my post, our family's social media erupted into chaos. The same relatives who had condemned me days earlier were now turning on my parents with fury. "How dare you throw your daughter out and then lie about her? You made her work for free since she was 14? You demanded rent from your own child on graduation night? What kind of parents are you?" My mother tried damage control, posting lengthy explanations that only dug her deeper. "You don't understand the whole situation." But people weren't buying it anymore. Every excuse was met with screenshots of my boss's confirmation and more outraged responses. My phone buzzed constantly with calls from my parents. I ignored them all. Instead, I stayed at Grandma's house, watching as her auditor and his team tore through years of the store's financial records. "Rachel," the auditor said one evening, his face grim, "we've found something serious." The numbers were staggering. Year after year, my parents had been siphoning money from the store into their personal accounts. They'd created fake vendor payments, inflated expenses, and pocketed the difference. The salary they'd supposedly been paying me? That went straight into an account under their control. But that was just the beginning. The total amount, the auditor hesitated, is over $500,000. Grandma's face turned to stone. She immediately called a family meeting at her house. I sat next to her in the living room as my parents and Tommy arrived, my father trying to look confident, my mother nervously clutching her designer purse. "Sit down," Grandma commanded. "Do you know what we found in the audit?" "Mother, I can explain," my father started. "Explain?" Grandma's voice could have cut glass. "Explain how you stole from me for years? Explain how you pocketed your own daughter's wages? Explain how you tried to frame her for theft to cover your tracks." She slapped the audit report on the coffee table. $500,000. You stole $500,000 from me, while treating your daughter like a slave and throwing her out on the street. My mother burst into tears. "Please, we can work this out." "Oh, we'll work it out all right," Grandma snapped. "You have two choices. Either you pay back every penny you stole, or I press charges and you both go to jail for fraud and embezzlement." The color drained from my father's face. We don't have that kind of money." "Then start selling things. Your cars, your vacation home, everything. And you'll take out loans for the rest." In the end, their expensive cars were sold. Tommy's college fund was emptied. They had to take out massive loans to cover the rest. The beautiful house I'd been thrown out of was now mortgaged to the hilt. After the audit revelations, Grandma called an emergency staff meeting at the store and announced that my parents were no longer associated with this business in any capacity. The look on my mother's face as she was escorted out of the store she'd thought she'd inherit was something I'll never forget. "I've appointed Mark Davidson as temporary manager," Grandma told me over dinner that evening. "He's experienced, trustworthy, and most importantly, he knows this is a temporary position." "Temporary?" I asked. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Until you graduate. This store was always meant for someone who understands both business and ethics." "That's you, Rachel." A week later, she made it official. The family gathered at her lawyer's office as she signed new documents, officially removing my parents from her will. "The store and majority of my assets will go to Rachel," she declared, her voice firm. "She's earned it, not by being born into this family, but by proving her worth through hard work and integrity." But Grandma's heart is too big to completely ignore Tommy. "Your brother will receive a portion of my estate," she told me. "He's not responsible for your parents' actions, and he's still my grandson." Tommy and I have grown closer through all of this, surprisingly. Without our parents' toxic influence constantly pitting us against each other, we found our way to a real sibling relationship. He stops by my dorm room sometimes, and we talk about everything: his struggles to adjust to this new reality, his own college plans now that his fund is gone, his anger at our parents for their betrayal. "I'm sorry," he told me recently. "For all those years I was such an entitled brat while they treated you so badly. I didn't see it then, but I see it now." As for our parents, I haven't spoken to them since that day at Grandma's house. They still try to reach out occasionally: birthday cards, holiday messages, attempts at reconciliation. I send them all back unopened. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Grandma comes to visit me at college regularly, usually bringing coffee from Corner Cafe. She's become a regular there since learning my story. We sit in the campus courtyard, discussing my classes and planning the future of the store. She's teaching me everything she knows about the business, just like she did when I was little, but now with real stakes and real purpose. "You know what the most valuable thing in business is?" she asked me recently. "Integrity. Without it, no amount of success means anything. Your parents never understood that. But you do." Looking back at everything that's happened, I realize that while my parents' cruel treatment hurt me deeply, It also taught me invaluable lessons about who I want to be, and who I don't. Their actions showed me exactly what kind of business person I won't become. Next year, I'll graduate with my business degree. The store that was meant to be my brother's by birthright will become mine by merit. But more importantly, I'll have earned something no one can take away, the knowledge that I succeeded not because of my family's advantages, but despite their obstacles. Sometimes life's greatest gifts come disguised as its greatest challenges. My parents thought they were punishing me by making me work in that store at 14. Instead, they were giving me the experience I'd need to one day run it. They thought throwing me out would break me. Instead, it set me free. And that expensive tableware store that started all of this? Just wait until you see what I do with it.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm just a regular 8-year-old living in a tiny apartment on the outskirts of Chicago with my mom, Lisa. We don't have much, but I love her more than anything. Every weekend, we have this special tradition, pancakes at Mel's Diner. It's like our little slice of heaven. Sarah, honey, you ready for some pancakes? Mom calls out one Saturday morning. You bet. Can I get extra syrup this time? I bounce excitedly. We'll see, sweetie. Let's get going. As we walk to the diner, I notice Mom's hands are shaking a bit. She's been doing that a lot lately, but I try not to worry. At Mel's, we slide into our usual booth, and the waitress, Jenny, comes over with a smile. The usual for you too. You know what, Jenny, Mom replies, but her voice sounds different, strained. While we wait for our food, I chatter on about school and my best friend, Emma. Emma and I are working on this awesome science project. We're growing crystals. Did you know that, Mom? That's nice, sweetie. Mom interrupts, her eyes darting around the diner. She's already on her third cup of coffee. Our pancakes arrive, but Mom barely touches hers. She keeps checking her phone, tapping her foot nervously. Mom, are you okay? I ask, syrup dripping from my fork. I'm fine, Sarah. Just eat your pancakes. Halfway through the meal, Mom stands up abruptly. I need to use the restroom. Stay here, okay? I nod, my mouth full of pancake. But as the minutes tick by, a knot forms in my stomach. The pancakes start to feel heavy, like lead. Where is she? An hour passes, then two. Jenny keeps glancing at me, concern etched on her face. You okay there, sweetie? Where's your mom? She went to the bathroom. I mumble, fighting back tears. Jenny frowns and heads to the back. When she returns, her face is pale. Sarah, honey, I think we need to call someone. And just like that, my world shatters. The realization hits me like a truck. Mom isn't coming back. She left me here, alone in a diner booth with half-eaten pancakes and a growing sense of terror. I don't understand. Did I do something wrong? Why would she leave me? The questions swirl in my head as Jenny makes a phone call, her voice low and urgent. I sit there numb as the diner bustles around me. Regular customers come and go, oblivious to the fact that my entire world has just crumbled. It'll be okay, sweetie, Jenny says, but I can see the pity in her eyes. It doesn't feel okay. Nothing feels okay. As I wait for whatever's coming next, I replay every moment of the morning in my head. The shaky hands, the distracted responses, the nervous glances. Were these all signs? Should I have seen this coming? The sound of sirens in the distance snaps me back to reality. This is really happening. Mom is gone, and I'm alone in a diner, about to face a future I never imagined. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would shape the rest of my life. A journey of betrayal, resilience, and ultimately justice. The sirens grow louder, and I see flashing lights pull up outside Mel's Diner. My heart is pounding so hard, I think it might burst out of my chest. Sweetie, the police are here. They're going to help us figure this out, okay? Jenny says, her hand on my shoulder. I can only nod, my throat too tight to speak. 2 officers walk in, their faces serious. Are you Sarah? One of them asks, kneeling down to my level. Yes. I manage to squeak out. I'm Officer Thompson. We're here to help. Can you tell us what happened? I try to explain, but the words come out all jumbled. Jenny steps in, her voice low. Her mother left her here. There's a note. Officer Thompson's partner talks to Jenny in hushed tones. I catch snippets like child services and emergency placement. Where's my mom? I finally blurt out. Is she coming back? The officers exchange a look that makes my stomach drop. We're going to do everything we can to find her, Sarah. But right now, we need to make sure you're safe and taken care of. A woman in a suit arrives, introducing herself as Miss Carter from Child Protective Services. She talks to me in a gentle voice, explaining that I'll be staying with a foster family for a while. But I want to go home, I protest, tears streaming down my face. I know, sweetie, but we need to make sure you're safe and cared for while we sort this out. The next few hours are a blur. Miss Carter takes me to the Thompsons' house. No relation to Officer Thompson, just a coincidence. They seem nice, but all I want is my mom. Sarah, we're so glad you're here, Mrs. Thompson says, showing me to a small bedroom. I know this is scary, but we'll take good care of you. That night, I cry myself to sleep, clutching the stuffed bear Mrs. Thompson gave me. In the morning, Mr. Thompson makes pancakes, but they taste like cardboard in my mouth. Not hungry, kiddo? He asks gently. I shake my head, pushing the plate away. Days turn into weeks. I start a new school, but the other kids whisper behind my back. That's the girl whose mom didn't want her, I overhear one day at lunch. Shut up, Jake, my friend Emma snaps. She's been my rock through all of this, visiting me at the Thompsons whenever she can. Don't listen to them, Sarah, Emma says, squeezing my hand. They're just dumb. But the words still sting. At night, I have nightmares about being left alone in dark, scary places. One day, Miss Carter visits with news. Sarah, the police found your old apartment empty. Your mom, she took everything and withdrew all the money from your accounts. It feels like being punched in the gut. She's not coming back, is she? I whisper. Miss Carter just shakes her head, her eyes sad. I start seeing a therapist, Dr. Puddle. At first, I don't want to talk, but she's patient. It's okay to be angry, Sarah, she tells me one day. What your mom did wasn't fair. I hate her. I burst out, surprising myself with the venom in my voice. That's a valid feeling, but remember, her actions don't define you. Dr. Patel would often remind me. Slowly, with her help and the support of the Thompsons, Emma, and my neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez, who always brought homemade cookies, I began to heal. It wasn't easy, and some days were harder than others, but I was determined to prove that I wasn't unwanted. One night, as Mrs. Thompson tucked me in, I made a promise to myself. I'm going to build a life so amazing that my mom will regret ever leaving me. And maybe, just maybe, I'll find out why she did it. Little did I know that promise would set me on a path that would change everything. It's been 10 years since that day at Mel's Diner, and now I'm standing behind the counter at the Daily Grind, the cafe where I work part-time. I'm wiping down the espresso machine when I hear the bell above the door jingle. Welcome to the Daily Grind. What can I get for you? I start to say, but then freeze. Standing in front of me is a face I haven't seen in a decade but could never forget. Jenny? Her eyes widen in recognition. Sarah? Oh my God, is that really you? I nod, my throat suddenly tight. Yeah, it's me. Look at you, all grown up. Wow. How are you? We chat for a few minutes, catching up. I tell her about being adopted by the Thompsons, my upcoming scholarship to state. Then Jenny's face turns serious. Sarah, there's something I need to tell you about that day. My heart starts racing. What is it? Your mom, she didn't leave alone. There was a man with her. I remember hearing her call him Tommy. It's like the ground shifts beneath my feet. Tommy? Did you tell the police? Jenny nods. I did, but they never found anything. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I carried this for years, wondering if I should have tried harder to find you, to tell you. I'm reeling from this information. When my shift ends, I practically spring to Emma's dorm room, bursting in without knocking. Well, Sarah, what's wrong? Emma asks, looking up from her computer. I spill everything Jenny told me. Emma listens, her eyes widening. Holy crap, Sarah. What are you going to do? I don't know, but I can't just let this go. I need to find out what happened. Emma spins her chair to face her computer. Well, lucky for you, you've got a best friend who's a whiz at online sleuthing. Let's see what we can dig up on this Tommy guy. For the next few weeks, Emma and I spend every spare moment researching. We create a makeshift investigation board in her dorm room, connecting bits of information with red string, just like in the crime shows. Look at this, Emma says one night, pointing at her screen. I found a bunch of complaints about a guy named Anthony Russo. He's got a history of dating single moms and then disappearing with their money. I lean in, my heart pounding. That has to be him. Emma, what if? What if he manipulated my mom into leaving me? It's possible, Emma says cautiously, but Sarah, are you sure you want to go down this rabbit hole? It could be dangerous. I take a deep breath. I have to know the truth, Em. I've spent 10 years wondering why my mom abandoned me. If there's a chance she was manipulated or in trouble. Emma nods, understanding in her eyes. Okay then, let's do this right. We need a plan. We spend the next few days setting up fake social media accounts, trying to lure Tommy out. It's slow going, but finally, we get a hit. Sarah, look, Emma exclaims. I think I found them. There's a couple running seminars for single moms in Indiana. The guy matches Tommy's description and the woman, Sarah, I think it might be your mom. I stare at the grainy photo on the screen, my heart in my throat. The woman's hair is different, but those eyes, I'd know them anywhere. That's her, I whisper. That's my mom. What do you want to do? Emma asks softly. I straighten up, a plan forming in my mind. We're going to Indiana. And we're going to shut them down. Sarah, are you sure? This could be really dangerous. I look at Emma, determination burning in my chest. I'm sure. They've hurt people, Em. They're still hurting people. I can't let that continue. Emma nods, a slow smile spreading across her face. All right then, road trip to Indiana it is. But first, we need to call in some backup. I raise an eyebrow. Backup. Yeah, Emma says, reaching for her phone. I think it's time we got the police involved, real police, not just two college kids playing detective. As Emma dials, I stare at the photo on the screen. After 10 years, I'm finally going to get some answers, and maybe just maybe, some justice too. My hands are shaking as I walk into the police station with Emma by my side. We're here to meet Detective Martinez, I say to the officer at the desk. Detective Martinez, the officer who worked on my case all those years ago, steps out to greet us. Sarah? Is that really you? It's me, Detective. I have some information about my mother. We sit down, and I lay out everything we've discovered. Detective Martinez's eyes widen as he flips through our evidence. This is impressive work, Sarah. You'd make a hell of a detective. So will you help us? I ask, my voice trembling slightly. Detective Martinez nods. We'll set up a sting. But Sarah, you need to be prepared. This might not end the way you hope. The next few days are a whirlwind of preparation. We create a fake business profile, dangling the promise of easy money. Emma's tech skills come in handy as we set the trap. They've taken the bait, Emma says, showing me her laptop. They're coming to Chicago next week. The day of the sting arrives. I'm sitting in Mel's diner, which feels like a cruel twist of fate. Detective Martinez and his team are scattered around, posing as customers. You okay, kid? Detective Martinez asks quietly. I'm fine, I lie, though my stomach is in knots. The bell above the door jingles, and my heart stops. There they are, Tommy and my mother, Lisa. She looks older, worn down, but it's undeniably her. Chicago PD. Freeze! Detective Martinez shouts, standing up. Tommy makes a break for it but doesn't get far before he's tackled by an officer. Lisa just stands there, her eyes locked on mine. Sarah, she whispers, her voice breaking. I stand up slowly, my legs feeling like jelly. Hello, Mom. Oh God, Sarah, I'm so sorry. Tommy, he made me do it. I didn't want to leave you, I swear. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. You didn't want to leave me. You left me as a tip in a diner. Please, Sarah, you have to believe me. Tommy said if I didn't leave you, he'd hurt you. I thought I was protecting you. I shake my head, tears streaming down my face. No, you don't get to play the victim here. You abandoned me. Do you have any idea what that did to me? Lisa reaches out to touch me, but I step back. Sarah, please. I've regretted it every day. Can't you forgive me? I take a deep breath, steadying myself. No, Mom, I can't. What you did was unforgivable. I've built a life without you, and I'm doing just fine. As the officers lead Tommy and Lisa away in handcuffs, I feel a weight lift off my shoulders. It's over, finally, truly over. The story has come to an end, but now I have a question for you. If you were in Sarah's shoes, would you have forgiven your mother? Or do you agree with her decision not to? What would it take for you to forgive such a betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective could help others wrestling with similar dilemmas. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Hey there, I'm Sarah Thompson, 32 years old and absolutely thriving in my marketing career. My husband Mike and I are living the dream in our cozy suburban home, a place we work our tails off to afford. It's not a mansion, but it's ours, and that's what matters. On the surface, everything with Mike's parents, Robert and Linda Carter, seems great. We host big family dinners and are always ready to lend a hand when needed. But beneath that picture-perfect facade, there's more tension brewing than in a pot of my mom's famous chili. Just last Sunday, we had them over for our usual monthly dinner. I spent the whole day whipping up a pot roast, determined to impress Linda. As we sat down to eat, Robert cleared his throat. "Sarah, this looks amazing. You've really outdone yourself this time." I beamed, feeling a surge of pride. "Thanks, Robert. I hope it tastes as good as it looks." We started eating, and for a while, the only sounds were forks scraping plates. Then Linda chimed in, "Oh, Sarah, I meant to ask, you work in marketing, right? We were wondering if you could give us some advice on a little business venture we're considering." I nearly choked on my green beans. This wasn't the first time they'd fished for financial advice, and alarm bells started ringing in my head. "Oh? What kind of venture?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. Robert jumped in, eyes gleaming with excitement. "It's an amazing opportunity a friend told me about. We could double our money in just a few months." I exchanged a glance with Mike, who looked just as uneasy as I felt. "That sounds interesting," I said cautiously. "But high returns usually come with high risks. Maybe we could look at the details together." Linda waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, don't worry about that. We trust our friend. Actually, we were hoping you might help us out with a small loan to get started, just a few $1,000s. The pot roast suddenly felt like a brick in my stomach. This wasn't the first time they'd asked for money, and it always made me uneasy. But whenever I voiced my concerns to Mike, he'd say, "They're family, Sarah. We have to help out when we can." I forced a smile. "Why don't we discuss this after dinner? Let's enjoy the food while it's hot." But as the evening wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. I told myself I was overreacting. They were family after all. What could possibly go wrong? Little did I know that uneasy feeling was a warning of the storm about to hit our lives. If only I had listened to it sooner. It was just another Tuesday when my world came crashing down. I was deep into a marketing campaign when my phone rang. The caller ID showed it was our bank. Weird, I thought, but I picked up anyway. "Mrs. Thompson, this is Jerry from First National Bank. I'm calling about your missed mortgage payments." I nearly dropped the phone. "Missed payments? There must be some mistake. We've never missed a payment in our lives." Jerry's voice was sympathetic but firm. "I'm afraid there's no mistake, Mrs. Thompson. You're 3 months behind." My head started spinning. I thanked Jerry and immediately called Mike. "Honey, we need to go to the bank." "Now?" An hour later, we were sitting across from a bank manager, staring at documents we'd never seen before. My stomach churned as I recognized the forged signatures, a crude imitation of our own. "This can't be happening," Mike muttered, his face pale. Over the next few days, we pieced together what had happened. The trail led straight to Robert and Linda. They had somehow used our house as collateral for a massive loan, then defaulted on it. When we confronted them, it was like a scene from a bad movie. We stood in the living room, the air thick with tension. "How could you do this to us?" I demanded, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. Robert at least had the decency to look ashamed. Linda, on the other hand, was all indignation. "We had no choice," she cried. "It was a foolproof investment opportunity. We were going to pay it all back before you even noticed." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Foolproof? You put our home at risk for some get-rich-quick scheme." Mike, usually the calm one, was seething. "Do you have any idea what you've done? We could lose everything." Robert tried to placate us. Now, let's not overreact. We can fix this. We just need a little more time." I cut him off. "Time? You've had months. The bank is talking about foreclosure, for God's sake. Linda had the audacity to look offended. Well, if you had just loaned us the money when we asked, none of this would have happened. I saw red. Are you seriously trying to blame us for your fraud? Mike put a hand on my arm, his voice dangerously quiet. I think we're done here. We'll be talking to our lawyer. Don't contact us again. As we left, I felt like I was in a daze. How could the people who were supposed to love us betray us so completely? Back home, the reality of our situation hit me like a ton of bricks. Our dream home, the one we'd worked so hard for, was at risk because of their greed and stupidity. I broke down, sobbing in Mike's arms. What are we going to do? He held me tight, his voice determined. We're going to fight, Sarah. We're not going down without a fight. As I lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, I realized something. The unease I felt all those months ago wasn't just paranoia. It was my instinct trying to protect us. And from now on, I was going to listen to it. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of our battle. But one thing was certain. I wasn't about to let Robert and Linda Carter destroy everything we built. They had no idea who they were messing with. The next morning, I was up before dawn, fueled by a mix of anger and determination. I'd spent half the night researching lawyers and found Amanda Rees, a shark in a power suit who specialized in fraud cases. By 9 a.m., I was in her office. So, Mrs. Thompson, walk me through what happened, Amanda said, her sharp eyes focused on me. I laid out the whole sordid tale, watching her expression darken. This is serious, but we can fight it. I'll start the legal proceedings immediately. As Amanda worked her magic, I decided to do some digging of my own. I started with a call to Mike's cousin Tom. Sarah, what's up? Tom, I need to ask you something. Have Robert and Linda ever asked you for money? There was a long pause. Yeah, they did. I lost my entire savings in some can't-miss investment opportunity. Why? My heart sank. You're not the only one. Over the next few weeks, I uncovered a trail of financial destruction. Aunt Martha, our old neighbor Jim, even Linda's own sister, all victims of the Carters' schemes. I gathered statements, documented losses, and built a case that made my blood boil. One night, as I pored over the evidence, Mike walked in looking exhausted. Sarah, it's 2 a.m. Come to bed. I shook my head. I can't. I'm so close to cracking this. Mike sighed. You need to rest. We both do. I felt a flare of irritation. How can you think about rest when we could lose everything? And how is running yourself into the ground going to help? He snapped back. We stared at each other, the tension palpable. This wasn't us. We never fought like this. I'm sorry, I said softly. I can't let them win. Mike's expression softened. He came over and wrapped his arms around me. We won't. But we need to do this together, okay? I nodded, realizing how much this was affecting us both. The next day, I met with Amanda to share my findings. This is gold, Sarah, she said, flipping through the documents. With this, we can not only save your house, but potentially bring charges against the Carters. I felt a glimmer of hope. So what's our next move? We gather all the victims, strength in numbers, and then we go after the Carters with everything we've got. I spent the next few days reaching out to everyone Robert and Linda had swindled. It wasn't easy. Some were ashamed, others afraid, but slowly they came around. We held a meeting at our house. The living room was packed, the air thick with shared anger and pain. They took everything from us, Aunt Martha sobbed. Jim, our ex-neighbor, nodded grimly, promised to double my retirement fund. Now I'm back to working part-time at 70. As I listened to their stories, my resolve strengthened. This wasn't just about Mike and me anymore. It was about justice for everyone the Carters had hurt. We're going to make this right, I promised them. Together we're going to make sure Robert and Linda can never do this to anyone else. As everyone left, Mike pulled me aside. I'm proud of you, you know that? I smiled, feeling truly hopeful for the first time in weeks. We're not out of the woods yet, but we're fighting back, Mike finished, his voice resolute, and we're doing it as a team. That night, as we lay in bed, I felt a shift. The fear and anger were still there, but now there was something else too. Determination, hope, and the unshakable knowledge that no matter what happened next, Mike and I would face it together. Little did Robert and Linda know, their day of reckoning was coming, and I was going to make damn sure they never saw it coming. The day of the court hearing arrived, and I felt like I was going to be sick. As we walked into the courtroom, I saw Robert and Linda for the first time in months. They looked smaller somehow, less intimidating. Amanda squeezed my arm. "You've got this, Sarah. Just tell the truth." As I took the stand, I locked eyes with Linda. She looked away first. "Mrs. Thompson, can you tell the court what happened?" I took a deep breath and laid it all out. The forged documents, the unauthorized loan, the years of manipulation. With each word, I felt stronger. And it wasn't just us, I concluded. They've been doing this for years to countless others. The defense tried to paint it as a misunderstanding, but Amanda was relentless. She brought forward victim after victim, each story more damning than the last. Halfway through the proceedings, a commotion erupted in the gallery. A man I didn't recognize burst in, waving papers. "Your Honor, I have information relevant to this case." Turns out, karma had perfect timing. The Carters' foolproof investment had just imploded spectacularly, taking what was left of their money with it. As the judge reviewed the new evidence, I watched Robert and Linda crumble. It was over, and they knew it. The verdict came swiftly. Not only did we keep our house, but Robert and Linda were facing serious jail time and multiple lawsuits. Outside the courthouse, Mike hugged me tight. "We did it, Sarah. It's over." But it wasn't over, not really. As we drove home, I couldn't shake the faces of all the other victims. "Mike," I said suddenly, "I want to start a support group for people like us who've been victims of financial fraud." He smiled. "I think that's a great idea." Over the next few months, we rebuilt our lives. We cut all ties with Robert and Linda. Last I heard, they were serving time in separate prisons. Good riddance. Our support group grew quickly. Every week, we'd meet in our living room, the same room where this whole nightmare started, but now, instead of tension and betrayal, it was filled with hope and healing. One night, after everyone had left, Mike found me staring out the window. "Penny, for your thoughts." I turned to him, feeling a wave of gratitude. "I was just thinking, as horrible as this all was, I'm almost glad it happened." He raised an eyebrow. "Really?" I nodded. "It taught me to trust my instincts. It showed me how strong we are together. And now we're helping others. That's pretty amazing, don't you think?" Mike pulled me close. "You're pretty amazing." As we stood there in the home we fought so hard to keep, I realized something. The Carters had tried to take everything from us, but they failed. In fact, they'd given us something invaluable. The knowledge that we could face anything as long as we faced it together. Life isn't always fair. Sometimes the people who should love you the most end up hurting you the worst. But here's what I've learned. It's not about avoiding betrayal. It's about how you rise above it, how you take that pain and turn it into something meaningful. And that's exactly what we did, one day at a time, one person at a time. We're making a difference, and honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. If you were in my position, would you have ever considered forgiving Robert and Linda for what they did? Is there a line that, once crossed, makes reconciliation impossible, even with family? Hi, I'm Lisa. As a dedicated architect, I've not only designed buildings but also built a stable and accomplished life for myself. By 32, I was living in a home of my own design. A true dream turned reality. This achievement stood in stark contrast to my younger sister Rachel's approach to life. At 27, she preferred taking the easy route, relying heavily on our parents for support. Our relationship had always been a bit strained, largely due to Rachel's tendency to stir up drama whenever she felt overshadowed. Despite this, I tried to maintain peace and offer support, even though it often felt one-sided. "Lisa, you're always so put together. Must be nice not having any real problems," Rachel would tease, her voice dripping with a mix of envy and sarcasm. "I've had my fair share, Rachel. Just because I don't broadcast them doesn't mean they don't exist," I'd reply, trying to keep the peace. When Rachel announced her engagement to Mike, a guy she'd been dating for just a few months, I was hopeful yet cautious. This could be her chance to finally mature and take responsibility for her own life. "He's amazing, Lisa. You'll see he's different from the rest," Rachel gushed one evening as we sat in my living room, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "That's great, Rachel. I really hope it works out," I replied, masking my reservations with a smile. "How did you two meet?" "At that yoga retreat I went to last spring. It was like an instant connection," she explained, fluttering her hands dramatically. Our parents were thrilled, immediately throwing themselves into wedding planning. They had a soft spot for Rachel and often indulged her more whimsical desires. I couldn't help but feel a bit sidelined, as usual, the responsible, reliable one. Lisa dear, we were thinking a wedding could be in your backyard. It's just perfect, my mom proposed one afternoon, her tone hopeful. I hesitated, my heart sinking a bit. We can talk about it, sure. Let's see what Rachel thinks. As much as I wanted to be supportive, I was also protective of my space, my sanctuary. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of what would become one of the most outrageous demands Rachel would ever make on me. During a family dinner, the air was light with excitement over Rachel's upcoming wedding, until the moment she dropped a bombshell on me. Since we're all here, I have something important to ask. Lisa, you know how much I love your house, right? It's just perfect for Mike and me to start our married life. I choked on my water, coughing a little as I processed her words. You're joking, right? Not at all. It's way too big for just you, and what better gift than helping your little sister out? Our parents exchanged uneasy glances, clearly torn. Lisa, maybe it's something to think about. It could really help Rachel and Mike, Mom suggested gently, trying to smooth things over. Dad, what do you think? I was desperate for some support, looking toward him with pleading eyes. Well, it is an unusual request, but it's also an opportunity for us to keep the family close. Dad added, his voice neutral. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You want me to give up my home, the home I built from scratch, as a wedding gift? Rachel's eyes widened, feigning surprise. It's not like I'm asking for a handout. Think of it as passing it on to family. Isn't that what families do? Help each other. Helping is one thing. This is something else entirely, I retorted, feeling the tension rise. It's just a house, Lisa. You can always build another. Rachel chimed in, her tone dismissive. Just a house. Rachel, you know how hard I've worked for it. It's not about the bricks and mortar. It's about what it represents. Mom tried to mediate. Maybe there's a way to make everyone happy. Lisa, could you at least think it over for the family? As the meal progressed, the atmosphere soured. Each comment from Rachel felt like another jab, another reminder that my hard work was being undervalued. You're being really selfish, Lisa. I thought you'd be happy to support me on my big day. Supporting your wedding and giving away my home are two very different things, Rachel, Dad sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Let's not turn this dinner into an argument. Lisa, take some time to think it over. All right. I nodded, more out of a desire to end the conversation than any agreement. As the dinner wrapped up, the weight of the conversation hung over me like a dark cloud. I needed a plan, a way to show them the absurdity of Rachel's request without tearing the family apart. That night, as I lay in bed, the walls of my home felt more precious than ever. The idea of handing over my sanctuary was unimaginable, yet the pressure from my family was real and pressing. I knew something had to be done, and simply refusing wasn't going to be enough. They needed to see Rachel's true colors, and I had just the idea to make that happen. After tossing and turning all night, I decided to call Mike. Surprisingly, he was just as frustrated as I was with Rachel's demands. Listen, Mike, I think we need to show her what it really means to own a home. It's not all dinner parties and decorating. Exactly, Lisa. She doesn't understand half of what goes into it. What do you have in mind? How about a trial period? Rachel moves in thinking she'll inherit the house. But we set up real-life challenges. Let her handle everything I do daily, from bills to unexpected repairs. Mike paused, then chuckled. You're serious? Like a reality check, yes. But it has to look supportive, not like a setup. Can you handle being on the inside? You bet. I'll make sure she doesn't suspect a thing. The next day, I invited Rachel over, putting on my best big sister face. So I've been thinking about your proposal, and maybe there's a way to work this out. How about a trial period? You and Mike move in and handle everything. If after 3 months it feels right, we can talk about transferring the house. Rachel's eyes lit up. Really? You do that? Of course, I replied. But it's not just about living here. It's about managing everything, bills, maintenance, the whole deal. Sounds easy enough, right, babe? Rachel turned to Mike, who nodded enthusiastically. Great, let's start this weekend. I'll help you settle in. As they moved in, I laid out the homeowner's handbook I had created, complete with budget sheets and a schedule of maintenance tasks. The first challenge was simple: a clogged sink. Just call a plumber, right? Rachel asked, scrolling through her phone. Nope, you're going to fix it. That's what homeowners do, I insisted, handing her a plunger and a wrench. Mike reported to me daily. She's already complaining. Missed her nail appointment because she had to wait for the HVAC guy. The hidden cameras I'd installed for security, which I'd informed them about, captured every tantrum and mishap. Rachel struggling to reset a tripped breaker, her meltdown over the lawnmower not starting, and her fury when the weekly budget fell short. Each day brought new challenges. I made sure the problems were just tough enough to push her but still believable as regular homeownership woes. Why is everything breaking? Rachel exclaimed one evening as another appliance had cuped. That's home life, Rachel. Things happen, I replied, hiding my smirk. As the weeks passed, Rachel's facade began to crack. Complaints piled up, and her true nature surfaced more with each passing day. Mike kept me updated, but he was growing wary too. This was a good idea, Lisa, but I'm not sure how much more I can take. She's not the person I thought she was. Just a bit longer, Mike. I think everyone needs to see this, especially our parents. The final week approached, and I planned a grand final. A mock house assessment to test all that Rachel had learned. The family was invited to see the results, setting the stage for what I hoped would be a revealing conclusion to this little experiment. As the family gathered, curious to see how Rachel had managed, the backyard was set up like a small festival. Everyone was in a jovial mood, unaware of the brewing storm. So Rachel, ready to show us how you've handled the house? I asked, handing her a checklist of the day's tasks. This is ridiculous, Lisa. Why do I need to prove anything? Rachel snapped, her patience thinning. It's all part of the trial. Everyone's here to support you. As Rachel attempted the first task, fixing a leaky faucet, the problems began. The faucet had been rigged to be a bit more troublesome than usual, a final test of her problem-solving skills. Why will this thing just work? Rachel's voice rose in frustration, echoing through the backyard as our relatives watched. You have to tighten it more, maybe, Mike suggested, trying to guide her without stepping in. I am tightening it, Mike. Nothing's happening. Moving on, Rachel was to balance the monthly budget. I had slightly altered the numbers as they wouldn't quite add up, testing her attention to detail and patience. This doesn't make any sense. These numbers are off, Rachel exclaimed, throwing down the pen. It should all be there, Rachel. Maybe take another look, I urged, keeping my tone neutral. I've looked 3 times, Lisa. Are you sure you didn't mess this up just to make me look bad? The final straw came with the lawn maintenance. Overnight, I'd had extra fast-growing grass seed spread, which made the yard look like it hadn't been mowed in weeks. Now for the lawn, Rachel. It seems to have grown quite a bit, huh? I remarked casually. This is impossible. It wasn't this high yesterday. Did you do this, Lisa? Rachel's face was a mix of anger and desperation. No, why would I do that? Grass grows, you know. That's part of having a home. I can't do this anymore. You set this all up to fail. You never wanted to give me the house. Her outburst caught everyone's attention. Mom and Dad looked on, bewildered by the scene unfolding. Rachel, calm down. Let's talk about this. Mom tried to intervene. No, Mom, you need to see how Lisa has been torturing me with these impossible tasks. She's been setting me up to fail this whole time. The family gathering, meant to be a celebration, turned into a spectacle of Rachel's meltdown. As difficult as it was, this was the moment of truth, revealing not just the condition of the house, but the true dynamics at play. After Rachel's public meltdown, the atmosphere was thick with tension and disbelief. As she stormed off into the house, tears streaming down her face, Mom and Dad approached me, their expressions heavy with regret. We're so sorry, Lisa. We never realized how much pressure we put on you, or how unreasonable Rachel's demands were, Mom said softly. It's not just about the house, Mom. It's about respecting each other's lives and efforts. I hope Rachel sees that now, I replied. Dad nodded, his usual jovial demeanor subdued. We've been too lenient with her, always making excuses. It's time we all took responsibility for our actions, especially Rachel. I turned towards Mike, who looked like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Despite everything, I felt a twinge of sympathy for him. I'm calling off the wedding, Lisa. I can't marry into this dynamic. It's not healthy for anyone, Mike said, his voice laced with resignation. You have to do what's best for you, Mike. I'm sorry it had to end this way. He managed a weak smile. Thanks for opening my eyes, Lisa. I hope Rachel learns from this. I really do. As the guests left, their murmurs of the day's drama echoing in the air, I took a moment to savor the quiet of my home. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace. The next morning, Rachel joined me in the kitchen, her eyes puffy from crying, her voice shaky. I'm sorry, Lisa. I didn't realize how out of line I was until I saw everyone's reactions yesterday. It's a start, Rachel, but apologies are just the beginning. You need to make some real changes. I know, I'm going to start therapy and find a place for Mike and me. Well, just me now, she admitted, her voice tinged with regret. That sounds like a good plan. Remember, Rachel, respect isn't given. It's earned, and that starts with respecting yourself enough to take responsibility for your life. Rachel nodded, a glimmer of understanding in her eyes. I'll try, Lisa. Really, I will. As the house slowly returned to its usual serene state, Mom and Dad began to see our family dynamics in a new light. They started setting boundaries with Rachel, who moved into a small apartment, began therapy, and took a more active role in managing her finances and life. It was a long road ahead, but there was hope that she could turn her life around. Meanwhile, I reclaimed my space and peace, focusing on my career and personal growth. The entire ordeal taught me the importance of boundaries and the strength it takes to maintain them. In the end, the house remained my sanctuary, a symbol of my hard work and dedication. And as for Rachel, with a bit of luck and a lot of work, maybe she'd find her own way, building something truly her own, rooted in reality and respect, not entitlement. The story of Lisa and Rachel has come to an end, but the conversation doesn't have to. What do you think about Lisa's decision to put Rachel through the homeownership test? Was it a fair strategy to expose Rachel's entitlement, or do you think there were better ways to handle the situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story and want to catch more like it, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel.